County Water District Board of Directors of March 24th, 2022. And first thing is we need to have our roll call. I was holding it to give
Director Coverdale?
Yes, I'm here.
Director Michelson?
Yes.
Director Reynolds?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I see.
It just came on. Vice President Mueller?
Here.
President Feldman?
Here.
And Director Reynolds?
Reynolds has.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, good.
Okay, so we're all on board and ready to rumble. First thing is public comment on any item that is not on the agenda this evening.
Do we have to do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Excuse me?
Yes.
The
Oh,
Pledge
I'm
of
sorry.
Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of Allegiance. I didn't see the flag, so I apologize. Okay, Ken, go for it.
I'd like John to go for it.
Okay, John, go for it. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance.
Is the
To the
flag
flag
of the
of the United States
of
of
America
America,
and to the
the
republic
Public.
which
for
is
which it
Stands.
stands, one
One
nation,
Nation.
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
Visible.
with liberty
liberty and
and justice for all.
For all.
Amen.
It's done.
Okay, and
Like-
now,
I like your vest, Glenn.
I'm sorry, we will call for public comment on any items not on the agenda this evening. Seeing no hands or any indication of public comment, then we'll get to item number 4, which is a public hearing for community input on the proposed ordinance number 2022-01, declaring a water shortage emergency and implementing mandatory water usage restrictions and prohibitions. Item A is the staff presentation of the ordinance. So I will turn it over to Mary at this point.
And I will turn this over to Kathleen, who will take us through the ordinance.
Yes, so we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation. So Mary is going to change the slides for me.
Okay. I assume you can see.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair and staff, do we have to have a motion to open the public hearing?
No,
Okay, just checking.
I don't believe so, Pat. It's the item on the agenda, so I.
Right. So right now we have the presentation. We will formally open the public hearing after the staff presentation. Note the time and then accept some public comments then. But that's item B. We're on item A right now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, so staff is presenting to the board and to the public ordinance 2022-01, which declares a water shortage emergency, has mandatory restrictions and prohibitions on water use, and is consistent with stage 2 of the district's water shortage contingency plan. Next slide. So as following my presentation will be the public hearing. This slide documents the public outreach and notification completed. So the draft ordinance was presented at a regularly scheduled board meeting on March 8th. The draft ordinance and the notice of public hearing were posted at the district's office. The draft ordinance and the notice of public hearing were published in the Half Moon Bay Review on March 16th and March 23rd. And the draft ordinance and notice of public hearing were posted on the district's website on March 11th. Next slide. So with this ordinance, the district is preparing for a third consecutive dry year, impacting all of the district's water supplies. San Mateo County is currently experiencing severe drought conditions along with most of the state. And I uploaded on the slide, it has what we call the drought map, and it was updated today. So that's the most current map and description of the conditions existing. So it shows about 94% of California is in severe drought and about 38% is in extreme drought. Next slide. As part of the water shortage planning process, the district must estimate water supply conditions at least 1 year into the future. And with an estimated 575 million gallons available to the district in calendar year 2022, and that's assuming dry conditions continue, there is not enough water supply to meet total normal demand. The allocation of 342 million gallons from SFPUC is the main reason for declaring a water shortage emergency. Under drought conditions and with constraints on our local surface water sources, the district will not be able to make up the difference with local water supplies. And so what we've had to do is we know how much water we're getting from San Francisco, the 342 million gallons for calendar year 2022. And we had to estimate what our local sources will be able to produce for us in calendar year 2022. And so that's what you see on the slide is our estimates. So we could do better, we could do worse. They're just estimates. Okay, next slide. So the goals for calendar year 2022 are to get a total water sales reduction of 17%, with most of that coming from a reduction in irrigation and a significant reduction in water waste. And it's water waste as defined in the ordinance. So we're also going to be focusing on educating customers about their individual water use and promoting the Water Smart program to those customers who haven't signed in. And we're going to continue to reach out to our partners in the regional water system to see if there's any surplus water that we can purchase from an agency as that's allowed under the water service agreement under Tier 2. So those are our goals for calendar year 2022. So next slide, please. Okay, so the ordinance is organized into sections. Section 1 contains the findings and determinations, which document the facts, the actions, and conditions in support of the ordinance. Section 2 provides definitions to help with the terminology used in the ordinance. And Section 3 has the declaration of the water shortage emergency. So we're going to go over in more detail sections 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, but I on the slide just put a summary. So Section 4A has a list of the prohibited actions for all customers, and those are based on the emergency regulations that the state passed in January. And then Section 4B, there's additional prohibited actions that weren't included in the state's actions that are added, and those apply to all customers. Section 4C has the specific end user requirements that apply to specific customer classes. Section 4D has the mandatory restrictions on outdoor irrigation. And Section 4E has specific prohibitions for homeowners associations. Section 5 describes the enforcement tools available to the district. Section 6 provides a description of how to, for a customer to appeal to the district, anything in the ordinance. Section 7 describes the effective date. Section 8 is description of severability, and Section 9 describes the publication of the ordinance. Next slide, please. Okay, so section 4A, these are the prohibited actions under the California Emergency Conservation Regulations. These apply to all the district customers. I'll briefly go through them. It's prohibited to cause more than incidental runoff such that water flows onto adjacent properties, walkways, roadways, parking lots, or structures. Using a hose, basically a garden hose without a shutoff nozzle or device that causes it to cease dispensing water when not in use. It's prohibited to use water to wash sidewalks, driveways, buildings, structures, patios, parking lots, and other hard surfaces. It's prohibited to use water for street cleaning or construction site preparation unless there's no other method that can be used. It's prohibited to use water in decorative fountains unless the water is recirculated. It's prohibited to cause more than incidental runoff such that water flows onto adjacent properties, walkways, roadways, parking lots, or structures. And it's prohibited to apply water to irrigate turf or ornamental landscapes during or within 48 hours of measurable rainfall. And they define measurable rainfall of at least 1/4 of an inch of rain. And it's prohibited to use water for the irrigation of ornamental turf on public street medians. So the exceptions to these, there are in the state's emergency regulations include when it's necessary to address an immediate health and safety need or to comply with a term or condition issued by a state or federal agency. So next slide. So section 4B, these are additional prohibitions to prevent water waste in the service area. These apply to all district customers. The use of water that causes flooding or pooling due to supersaturation of the ground or soil. The use of water when the district has given notice to repair broken or defective plumbing, equipment, appliances, sprinklers, and irrigation systems. The indiscriminate running of water or washing with water that causes runoff, the use of water for single pass-through cooling systems, and the filling of pools, except when a cover is being used on the pool when it is not in use. Section 4C, these requirements and prohibitions apply to specific classes of customers. So portable meter users or customers. They must have written permission to take water from hydrants for specific and limited purposes. An exception to that would obviously be the Coastside Fire Protection District, for any kind of emergency or for having to flow test or something like that. It's required that eating and drinking establishments serve water on request only. That hotels and motels offer guests the choice of not having linens and towels laundered daily. And we're requesting, and this is voluntary, all residential customers to make an effort not to exceed 50 gallons per day per person. And so I provided a table on the slide that has the end uses that are typically found in a single family home or an apartment. They include clothes washer, dishwasher, faucets, shower, toilets. And then an estimated gallons per day per person that could be used, and you would still meet the 50 gallons per day per person threshold. And you'll notice there's not a lot left over for irrigation with this. And so clothes washer, it's 5 gallons per day per person, but if you don't do laundry every day, you just do it like once a week, you could think of that as like 35 gallons per week per person, something like that. A dishwasher uses about 2 gallons per day per person. Kitchen faucet, you're allowed 9 gallons per day per person. Bathroom faucet, 4 gallons per day per person. A shower is 18 gallons per day, and a toilet, 8 gallons per day. So this will vary, but it just is an example to show you, what the water use is per end use to try to meet that 50 gallons per day per person. Okay, next slide. So section 4D has the mandatory restrictions on outdoor irrigation. And so it has that spray irrigation is limited to the hours between 5 p.m. and 8 a.m. Spray irrigation is limited to 10 minutes per irrigation station. And spray irrigation is not allowed on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. That third bullet was a request of operations. Since we're not fully staffed on the weekends, they wanted to have that cushion of not having a huge demand on the weekend from irrigation. So this table on the slide shows days of the week restrictions for spray irrigation for odd addresses and sites with no address. For the months of March through September, you're allowed 2 days a week of irrigation, Tuesday and Thursday. And again, this is spray irrigation. For an address that's an odd address or no address for the months of October through February, you're allowed 1 day a week of irrigation, spray irrigation, and that day is Thursday. And then there's a footnote that irrigation should be avoided except for extended dry periods. For an even address for the months of March through September, you're allowed 2 days a week, Mondays and Wednesdays. And then for the months of October through February, you're allowed 1 day a week, which is Monday. And again, it's footnoted with irrigation should be avoided except for extended dry periods. So next slide. There are exceptions to the time of day, days of the week, and length of time restrictions that we just went over. If you're going to use a handheld bucket or similar container to hand water some plants, that can be done at any time of the week and on any day. And then the use of a handheld hose, basically a garden hose with a positive shutoff valve or similar device, that can be done any day of the week at any time. The use of a properly functioning low volume irrigation system, which is defined in the ordinance. But basically it's most people are familiar with drip systems. So it would be something similar, a drip system or something similar. The use of a properly functioning I just talked about that one, sorry. The use of bubblers for trees. The state is very concerned, as I know we were talking about before the meeting started, with trees and trying to keep them healthy and alive. There's value to them. So we wanted to try to encourage, if possible, to keep the trees healthy. The use for very short periods of time for the express purpose of adjusting or repairing an irrigation system. So if you know you have sprinkler heads that aren't adjusted correctly, or you know you have a leak in the system, if you're just making repairs, you can turn it on for short periods of time to test it out and make sure your repairs are holding. And then the use of a legal gray water system. So I don't know how many of those there are, but they do exist. So those are definitely allowed. Okay, next slide, 12. Golf courses shall make every effort to voluntarily decrease their irrigation water purchased from the district by at least 50% from fiscal year ending in 2020. The golf course greens are not subject to the length of time of day, or days of the week restrictions because of the use of their water impoundments, and then the large amount of area that needs to be irrigated. But the ornamental landscape surrounding the golf course or within a golf course is subject, if it's spray irrigation, is subject to the length of time of day, and days of the week restrictions. So under a water shortage emergency, the district does not have enough surplus water to meet the irrigation demands of the one untreated water customer that the district has. So that untreated water customer shall be limited to 50% of their fiscal year ending in 2020 total water purchases from the district.
And can we say who that is, Kathleen? The one customer, Skylon Memorial Park. So if we're proposing to voluntarily decrease golf courses and make the cemetery go dry, just for everyone's information.
Okay, so there will be time after the presentation during the public hearing for the public to comment on the ordinance. So next slide. So section 4E lists specific prohibitions for homeowners associations mainly. So just as in the 2012 to 2017 drought, the state has restricted what HOAs and similar entities can enforce of their landscaping and architectural guidelines. This section also references, as you can see, section 4735 of the Civil Code. It's also, this came, wording came from the emergency conservation regulations that the State Water Resources Control Board passed in January. Okay, so next slide. Enforcement will only be used as a last resort for repeated violations of the ordinance. The district will focus on education, and if that fails, the district will look at enforcement, most likely maybe turning off water for certain types of accounts. That would probably be the most effective type of enforcement. We're not really looking at fines at this point. Next slide. Customers are allowed to appeal determinations of violations or request an exemption based on public health, public safety, or a regulatory requirement of a state or federal agency. Next slide. The ordinance will become effective once adopted, but it must be published within 10 days of adoption. Next slide. We have only received, up to the time of this meeting, one written comment that came from Kenmark Real Estate Group. They represent Ocean Colony Partners, the golf course basically. All of the board members received a copy of that written letter. Next slide. That concludes my staff presentation. So if you the board wanted to open the public hearing and receive public comments, we're ready to do that.
Okay, Patrick, so I want to go to item B, open public hearing at 7:22 p.m. And with that, we can ask for public comment. Do I have any comment from the public?
Am I the only public here?
Apparently so. Richard, can you introduce yourself, please, if you're going to comment?
Yes, please. First, my apologies to the board for interrupting. Not familiar with the protocol, so obviously have a strong opinion about this. I think this is an important topic. My name is Richard McCown. I'm the general manager at Skylon Memorial Park at the top of the hill of the 92. And so this obviously affects us quite a bit, right? You were talking about water restrictions. I think water restrictions are extremely important. We're obviously in a drought and things need to be done. There's no doubt about that. My comment to the board is to look at what's being done and what's being prioritized. In this proposed amendment, we're proposing the golf courses remain green so that the few that actually have the opportunity to golf here at the Ritz-Carlton are able to golf on green golf courses. But our grieving families in our community, we're cutting the water at Skylon Memorial Park by over 50%, which will not maintain the grass. So I just want the board to realize the decision that's being made here is that we're prioritizing a recreational sport for a few that play it over people in our community that actually go to Skylon to grieve for their families, and expect us to provide a safe, a beautiful landscape, something serene and calming, and not something that's dead. no pun intended with it, but it's our priorities are not in line with what they should be, in my humble opinion. I would add that.
Sorry, Richard.
I just want to add that for everyone's benefit, Skylon has traditionally not been the best at conserving water, but we have made a concerted effort spending hundreds of thousands of dollars over the past 3+ years to install a brand new water smart irrigation system, to make sure we have leak detection installed. We hired outside contractors to constantly fix leaks. We've relined our reservoir. We've replaced every single sprinkler head in our 125 acres with water efficient sprinkler heads. We have water smart controllers that sense the rain and stop and only water what it should be. And so there's been a significant investment in reducing water so that we can water efficiently and be better stewards of water, which, I don't know, just for the benefit of the board.
Richard, thank you for the comments. So do we have Mary, did you have any comment on this? I know that I believe you met with Richard and Kathleen on this subject sometime earlier to go over all of this with them. So this is certainly something he's aware of and has a strong opinion on. So we appreciate his input and understand his concern and the rationale behind it, and the fact that he has made every effort over the years to improve this. So we do appreciate that work that you've done to do this. Chris, you had a comment?
Yeah, for clarification, what are the different, how are we treating the golf course relative to Skylon? What are the major differences that Richard here is alluding to? Just for clarification, in case anyone else watches this tape.
Sure. So the Skylon, the untreated water customer, has mandatory restrictions of 50% based off of their fiscal year ending in 2020 purchases from the district. With the golf course, we're making it voluntary, a goal to reach a 50% reduction. They do have they still have mandatory restrictions and prohibitions regarding their ornamental landscaping around the golf course. But they don't have the mandatory 50% cutback from their purchases from fiscal year.
Which goes to Richard's case, which I can see. I can definitely see his point. Okay, thank you for clarification.
Yeah, and if I could add, Patrick, he can interject here too, but the issue is that Skylon is not within our service area. And is considered under the water code a surplus water customer. And Patrick, I'll let you explain that as well.
Sure, I'm happy to jump in. So that is the key difference, is that Skylon's not within the district service area. And as Mary mentioned, there are statutory restrictions on the district providing water outside its service area, and it can only provide surplus water outside its service area. And, the state has already declared a water shortage emergency. SFPUC, the district's wholesalers, declared a water shortage emergency. And what the district is considering tonight, what the board is considering tonight, is actually declaring a water shortage emergency within the Coastside County Water District's jurisdiction. And by definition, if the board were to do that, it is saying it doesn't have enough water to meet the ordinary needs of its customers for health, for human consumption, and for fire protection. And so therefore, the amount of surplus water that the district has to sell outside its service area is very limited. And we've had lots of discussion about if there's any surplus water. And so what the staff has decided to do is to recommend to the board is to reduce it a certain amount. But if the water supply situation gets worse and the district has no surplus water, then the district wouldn't be able to provide any water to Skylon because they're outside the district service area.
So thank you both for the further clarification. I think that's really valuable. Thank you.
I think it's important to point out too that Skylon's been around since 1957 and has been a customer of Coastside since that time. Coastside has always supplied water to Skylon, just for what it's worth.
Yeah. John Muller? John?
Yeah, I'm just curious in the history day of going through this today. I don't believe we have the Crystal Springs pipeline passing through the cemetery property. Is that true or not, Richard?
We feed directly from the Crystal Springs pipeline. It pumps up the hill into it's on the watershed on the back of the property.
Yeah, as I understand the history, at the time the pipe was being installed, the cemetery was wanting too much for us to go through the property many years ago. That's all, just a little clarification from the historian.
Ah, I like it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, they were just too costly at the time. And unfortunately, couldn't come to an agreement. And I'm talking to one of the historians here of the water department. He wrote me a note.
Other comment on this?
Yeah, this is Glenn. Can you hear me, Bob?
I'm sorry, Glenn, I didn't see your hand.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Skylon for their efforts at conservation, and I appreciate that and thank them. I am concerned that as this drought gets worse as the summer progresses, I think we will all be taking water conservation efforts that are stronger than many of us are going to be comfortable with. And so I wanted to acknowledge and thank Skylon for working hard to conserve their water and make the efforts they have. I think we will see changes and we will reflect our policy further as it gets more. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments here? Any other public discussion? Okay, so hearing none, having had Richard's input, I can now close the public hearing at 7:31. Well, I'm 2 minutes behind, about 7:32. Sorry about that. Okay, and with that, I'm going to open it up for board comments. So, can we have any comments from members of the board regarding the ordinance?
I have, this is John, a comment on page eight regarding portable meters. And I'm just wondering if there's a time more so now than ever that we bring in all our portable meters to the yard or to headquarters. And then when they're requested, there would be a written request for them to be reissued out for temporary service. It's just a suggestion at this point, and I don't know what staff or the board feels about that, but sometimes I feel the portable meters, except for CAL FIRE, could be abused very easily, in my opinion. And I want to protect them and us.
Well, that's a good point. And staff, I'll ask them to look into that and see what the possibilities are there. And appreciate the input from John. Other comments from the board?
Yeah, this is Glenn. The presentation that Kathleen had, one of the earlier on slides, I didn't understand, Kathleen, why item 1 and item 7 seem to be a complete word for word repeat.
Item 1 and item, when we were talking about restrictions?
Yeah, so you said that nobody would allow water to run off their property in item 1, and then item 7, you said nobody should allow water to run off their property, and I didn't get it.
Let's see. Let me see if I can. So we had, let's see.
Do you have that slide?
The indiscriminate running of water or washing with water that causes runoff. Was that one of them?
I think so, yeah. And then number
Okay.
7, isn't that the same? Oh,
It's
there it is.
very-
Yeah. So number 1, causing more than incidental runoff such that water flows onto adjacent properties, walkways, roadways, parking lots. And then item 7, causing more than incidental runoff such that water flows onto adjacent properties, walkways, roadways, parking lots, or structures. I've read that like 4 times and I don't get it.
Well, is it in the ordinance that way, or is it just the presentation slide?
That was probably my error duplicating the same
Making the
restriction. So
It's not in the ordinance.
that's in the
that way.
slide. It's not that way in the ordinance.
She made the slide incorrect.
Yeah, it's
That's
an
correct.
error in the slide. Yes, that's an error in the slide.
Error in the slide.
Okay, thank you.
You reiterated. Good pick, good catch, Sean. That's good. Other comments? Look, we do this without relish and with a heavy heart. And don't any of us feel comfortable with the need to implement this ordinance for the second level of emergency water conservation. We've gone through this in great detail. Kathleen has spent inordinate hours with mayor and staff trying to make this as even-handed as we could, looking at both the present and the future situation. And I don't know that we could have come up with a better approach than we have at the time. And we're hoping, all of us, that we never get to have to go any further with this, or that things will change and we'll get enough rain to be able to move forward without this hanging over us. But in the meantime, I see no option to do this at this point. We've tried to even the pain across all venues, residential, commercial, agricultural, and all users, none of whom appear to really feel good about it, but who will have to step up to this. Because when things hit the fan, we have to have water for people to drink and for health and provision of the livelihood of the community. So we have no choice. So with that, if there are no other comments, I guess I can ask to have a motion to adopt this ordinance.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question, please. Again, I'm on page 8 under B4. I'd like a little clearer comments on the portable water ice making machine, because our 2 major Brussels sprout producers, by food safety California law, have to include ice on packing their product. So I don't know how much volume the ice machines use, but I just want to make that clear, that those are, other than possibly a liquor store or restaurants. So ice making machines probably do use quite a bit of water.
A huge ice making machine on Johnson Pier, and again, the fishermen need ice too. So while I totally get the ordinance, a number of exceptions, keep coming up, and I think John's bringing up some good ones. There isn't a perfect document out there.
So ice machines now recirculate the water through a heat exchange and are air cooled. It's very rare these days to find a ice machine that doesn't recirculate unless it's malfunctioning, a valve or something. I have yet to find one because it's just too expensive for a commercial business. It's just too expensive unless they have another source of water like well water or some surface water. It's just too expensive to not recirculate the water through a heat exchanger.
Okay. You do have in the ordinance the provision for exceptions that we may be unaware of. There may be things that need to be considered at such point as we learn about them. And you've provided at least the ability to review and look at exceptions. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yes. So like you said, there's certain, the customers can appeal to us based on public health, public safety, or a requirement from a state or federal agency. And if there's no alternative that can be used. So in the case of an ice machine, there are ones you can use that recirculate the water. So, but yes, there, you know, it's hard to know every exact situation. So we do allow that.
Okay, thanks for the input, John. Other Ken?
Ken first.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. I think that in looking at the ordinance, it's frustrating because none of us want to have to be so cautious. I think the whole community for years has worked hard to be efficient with our water. I think people have taken and gone to great lengths to conserve water. And so it's really frustrating to have to engage this step in the process. But everywhere I look, personally, I'm just surprised as to how little snowpack there is. I'm surprised as to, you know, the stream flows that we're seeing. We haven't really had the April snowpack reading yet, but I'm sure that the water content is going to be spring. And I think if we don't get started and we don't really make it known to the community how serious the conditions really are, I think we do the community a disservice. So as frustrating as it is, I'm sure at Skylon, you know, looking at all those acres of plant materials, you know, having problems. I don't know how people in the general public got to see the pictures we saw from Bruce Russell of the golf course before cutting back water and after cutting back water. So that was pretty interesting, the photography showing all the big brown rings around the golf course. And I'm sure that the golfers would much prefer green to the edges. But I think it's imperative that we start early and take this seriously because it could get a lot worse. And, you know, we don't want to live on that side of the planet. We all want to be optimistic. And hey, April's not over. We had 13 inches of rain in April one year, not that many years ago. So I haven't given up hope. I think there's always hope, but there's also reality. And so as frustrating as it is, I don't think we have a choice. And I think Kathleen's done a marvelous job. I thought the reason she put that item in twice was it's a really important item. And maybe you would read over it in the first reading and catch the second one. So I thought that was kind of clever, you know, go ahead and in the message and make sure that people really are sober about it, because there are bigger needs than those needs. You know, people are going to have to be able to wash, and God forbid that we have another COVID ramp up where, you know, we need it for health and safety of people's lives also. So it's frustrating, but I think it's a great job, and I would move that we go to this next stage. I don't have the agenda in front of me to read it out for Lisa to get it perfectly, but maybe someone else could read it out.
John, did you want to say something? I'm sorry.
Yes, I kind of agreeing along what the board said, very concerned about our neighbor up the hill. And my father is buried up there, and, you know, I don't visit him as much as I should, but, you know, if he has a little brown grass around there, he was a dairyman. He'd been around a lot of brown grass and hay in his day. But anyway, one of the things I want the public to understand is on page 3, under the 21st whereas, with the State Water Resources Control Board adopting the resolution, as it was mentioned a little bit here earlier, we didn't wake up this morning and say we're going to put this resolution in front of our customer base. This is coming from political appointees in Sacramento. And personally, on the State Water Resources Consortium Board, I was kind of disappointed that with these huge decisions being made, hopefully had a good reason to miss, but the chair of the State Regional Water Quality Control Board was absent during this vote. So I needed to get that off my thinking here, but those people are appointed by our Governor Newsom.
Well,
and they made a decision to send it to us.
We have the Governor, State Water Resources Control Board, and we have the SFPUC. The SFPUC has made it abundantly clear by reducing our water available by 50% that they're not kidding around and that we have no choice but to do something at this point because you're holding us to a new measure of availability, which we will be hard pressed to meet our known need for water in the next year. So there are enough people involved in this who are telling us what's in store for us that we have no choice. It's frustrating. It's a variety of many factors involved, but the numbers are there and that's what we're reacting to. So, Ken, did you want to make the motion? I'll read the resolution if you don't have it in front of you.
Yes, I would like to move that. I'd like to move that we adopt the water emergency
resolution. Consider adoption of ordinance 2022-01, declaring a water shortage emergency and implementing mandatory water use restrictions and prohibitions under Stage 2 water shortage emergency warning of the district water shortage contingency plan. Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Chris has seconded the motion. Can we call for, I'm sorry, John?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment on the motion, please. And then I think we have to stress that we will continue to work with all of our customers to the best of our legal ability to ensure that we can provide the water which we're available to provide to. And I just wanted to make that as a comment because I think
that's a comment, but not
our customers
an amendment to the motion. I mean, what you're saying is improve the motion that we're hoping and we will,
yes,
that staff works with the customer community and we work with them as necessary when we're asked to convince, to discuss and keep them aware of what we're doing and what our
it is in the motion also.
Yes, it is. No, to me as well.
Yeah.
We're all emotional. This affects all of us, not just customers. We're all customers too. And it's a very emotional situation to know that this can have the effect that it's going to have if in fact it has to go further than even this, because this is only the Stage 2 warning. There's a Stage 3, which is not elective in many cases. It's mostly mandatory. So we need to take that for what it's worth as well. So with that, any other comments? I'll ask for a vote.
Okay, Director Coverdale.
Aye. Aye.
Director Michelson.
Aye.
Director Reynolds.
Aye.
Vice President Mueller.
Aye.
President Feldman.
Yes. Okay. Given that, we have no other items on the agenda for the session meeting. Ken? Sorry.
I just wanted to make a comment and thank Richard McCowan for coming to the public hearing and voicing his concern. Appreciate your participation and being here in person. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would like to second that. I wish we had more public input. And so again, Richard, extending a personal thanks. And I too have family. My grandfather and grandmother are also buried up at Skylawn. I understand your frustration, and I can tell you historically, we have always considered you to be a good customer, a very cooperative customer. I know you have borne the burden of PG&E to pump the water up to your facilities up there. And I can tell you, we have always considered you to be a very valuable customer. And as the Bosca representative, I can tell you, I really hope this is just an anomaly in that we really got shortchanged in the Tier 2 allocation. And we're making every effort to resolve that. And we really, really hope this is just a one-off this year. And just know that we are making every effort, as John said, to take care of all of our customers, yourself included. Thank you.
If I may, one more brief comment. I had the opportunity to visit our creeks on the coastside, and San Gregorio Creek is, in my opinion, August flow. Pescadero Creek is almost at August flow. I was shocked how low they are. Gazos Creek was almost dry at the end, and I was just down at our Pillarcitas Creek checking on the unhoused that are living down there, and that creek is probably just the minimum flow that's coming with our guidance from the state, because it's scary. It's that low already, all those creeks. And I just pray that Dennis and San Francisco can keep flowing, but I'm sure they're running low too. So let's hope for the best local water source. But it's serious. And just to comment, my Valley farmer friends have probably close to 500,000 acres that will be not planted this year.
Right.
So look out, food
We're getting no water at all.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, lettuce prices were $70 a box this past week, a carton.
Hearing all this is my hope that we somehow maintain public outreach.
Yeah.
So that the public continues to understand how important this is, Mary and Kathleen. We do whatever we can to keep this in the public's view, because if they need to adhere and understand and do this, voluntary or not, it has to be something they really understand is a necessary evil, as it were. And we need to keep them aware of that, whatever that takes. If you have to put an article in the paper saying, remember, there's an ordinance that says we need to do this, and we need to keep and pay attention, then we need to do that too, so that they're always clear and it's always in the back of their mind that this is really serious and really important and really, really a real thing, actually. I guess is the best way to say it. Okay, I'm sorry, Richard.
No, may I? I don't know if it's out of line or not. I certainly don't want to buck protocol.
Go ahead, no.
I just appreciate everyone on the board listening. I do feel pretty strongly about it, but I do respect that we have a water shortage emergency. Mary and Kathleen obviously spent a lot of time putting this together. I think they did a fantastic job overall as a citizen of this community. I live in El Granada. I think it's necessary. I don't think there's any argument about that. I respect the decision. It's tough from my point of view. I'm the one that has to face the families that this affects every single day on the worst day of their life. And so it's a hard one for me to explain that to somebody, that somebody has voluntary restrictions, yet I'm sorry, but we're cut off. And so I'd leave it at that. And I would just say that if there's public outreach, we do have a sign on 92 that I would offer some space on, so that we could advertise the water shortage emergency to everybody on the coast side. That I think would be a good public service that I'd volunteer as part of the effort.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's generous. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
That's a definite place where it would be seen. There's no
doubt
that we get some outreach up there, especially when they're stuck in traffic. They'll see it for a long time. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. I want to thank you all for coming and giving your input. Ken,
thank you all.
Take care, stay safe, and watch that water use now, guys. Keep it under control. All righty, thank you much. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
I have an aqua meeting tomorrow too.